Hi, welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be sharing with you 7 years of homeschool knowledge I have gained over our homeschool journey. And so if you are interested in this type of content and other homeschool and lifestyle content, please remember to subscribe and let's get into it. All right, so I thought it would be fun, informative, helpful, all of those things to maybe talk to you about some of the things that I've learned over our 7-year homeschool journey. We are currently in our 8th year of homeschooling. And so I started making a list of some things that I have learned over this time. Obviously, there's probably a lot more. These are just the ones that came to my mind, and I asked my husband too, what are some things he's learned or that are maybe be helpful or whatever over this homeschool experience. So those are the things that I'm gonna share with you today. The first thing is, if you suddenly find yourself homeschooling, just relax and give yourself time to get your homeschool curriculum together. I say this because this was at the very beginning of our homeschool journey. We were kind of pushed into homeschooling, pulled our kindergartner out of school within a month of him being in school, and I felt very unprepared. And I just was like, oh my gosh, what are we gonna do? And I felt the need to like rush everything. Like, okay, gotta get all this stuff together, gotta get all this curriculum. And I didn't really take as much time as I probably should have to research what was out there, maybe some of the things I liked the best. He was just in kindergarten, so it wasn't like he needed a whole lot. But when all of a sudden you take on responsibility for teaching your children, it is a lot. Like, it seems like a lot. And sometimes it is a lot, but I think we blow it up bigger in our brains than it really is. So I think that's what happened to me. And instead of just taking time and being like, it's okay, we'll just give them a few fun things to do and maybe find some easy math things that are free online, and then go through curriculums, kind of figure out what seems like it would work and things like that. Because I think we spent like the first 3 or 4 years of his homeschool life going through several different types of curriculum before we finally found something that worked, and that still might happen. But I feel like you have time, like you don't have to rush into a homeschool curriculum or exactly how you're gonna homeschool. It may seem urgent, but it's really not, okay? Your kids will survive if they just get to play games for a month or something while you figure everything out. It will be okay. The next thing I've learned is the importance of taking breaks, okay? You can plan them into your homeschool year, like into your quarters. You can have really set amounts of time that you do breaks. Or you can just, if you get burnt out a little bit and people are struggling more than normal, you can take a break. If everyone happens to get sick, or a few people get sick, or you are sick, it makes it really hard. You know, especially like there's been times I've had colds and you do a lot of reading, at least we do. And so I'm reading a lot out of read alouds or just curriculum to my kids. And when I have a cold and my throat hurts and all that kind of stuff, that's really hard to do. So sometimes just take a break. It's okay to just take a break and to not do it. And again, the world will keep rotating. Your kids will keep learning. Okay, it's not the end of the world if they don't have school for a week or two, because everybody just needed to take a break. The next thing is to read more books. And I've mentioned this in other videos recently, but I feel like over the course of these last 7 going on 8 years, I would just say just read more books. And again, if that's something where all of a sudden you find yourself homeschooling, just reading books is a really good option until you figure out what you want to do. Okay, you don't have to get a whole curriculum or anything, but you can go to the library, get some books, do some reading with your kids, and that's a great place to start. But I think just in general, reading more to your kids, and I enjoy it. Like, I pick things that I enjoy as well. So you don't have to have it be boring and stuff like that. And you're just like, why are we reading this book? Maybe some will be like that, but you can have it be like a good experience for everybody. So that's something I would have focused on. I also think it's important to create some sort of homeschool space. That is something that I've learned over several years. It's something that I already knew about myself, like having spots for certain activities, or, you know, having a place for everything to go is important to me, and it keeps my life organized as it possibly can be with 6 kids. But having a homeschool space is helpful, because sometimes if you're just in all the rest of the house, you might get distracted, your kids might get distracted, okay? If there's other things going on in your home, you know, maybe you have people coming in and out and doing work, or like my husband works from home. So sometimes if we're all in the same space, we forget that he's working, or my kids forget that they're doing school and stuff like that. So sometimes just having a spot that's ours, and especially for curriculum, for books, everything, so it's not scattered all over the house. We can have everything in one spot and we can kind of work together that way, I think is extremely helpful. Sorry, I'm playing with the lighting on my ring light because it's kind of a gloomy day and the lights are being weird. So if my skin tone is changing colors, that's why I'm like, I don't know what actually looks best. And sometimes it's a little darker outside, sometimes it's a little lighter. So here we are. So let's look at the next thing. I have my list right here that we're going through. But one of the things that I've learned, especially in the last few years, is to take it easy when you have a baby and plan your homeschool schedule around that baby. And so when we first started homeschooling, I thought I had had my last baby. I had our fourth child, she was little. And so we usually just did some schoolwork while she took a nap, and we weren't doing very much. Again, my oldest was in kindergarten. And so we were just doing a little bit of stuff. It wasn't really that big of a deal, and we could get it all done usually while she was napping. But now, there was a 5-year gap and a surprise baby. So now we have 2 more kids. So we have 2 little kids, and having them, I had one in January and one in August. And so I planned my homeschool year around them, like what we were gonna be able to get done. And I think our Christmas break was a little bit longer than normal that year. I can't remember exactly. But last summer, I planned to I was like, okay, we'll be done the beginning of May. We'll take a few months off, start a little bit of homeschool, but then all of August will be off for me. And so that was the plan. We do some summer schoolwork and stuff like that, but usually we take 1 or 2 months completely off of school. And so I made sure one of those months was the month I had my baby, because she was born at the beginning of the month, so I could have the whole month off. And then I take it easy as we go back into school, and it depends on the baby. Those 2 babies had very, very different temperaments and stuff. So sometimes it was with my older child, he's now almost 3, it was much harder to just do homeschool and to do group work and all that kind of stuff, because he was a very grumpy child, very grumpy baby. Whereas my 1-year-old, she's 15 months now, she is very easygoing. And so it was a lot easier when she was a newborn to do all the homeschool things, because she didn't need as much attention and she would sleep really well and all that kind of stuff. And so it also depends on the temperament of the baby, but plan that in. Okay, don't think you have to get all the things done. I know I keep sounding like a broken record, but your kids will survive if they're not getting all their schooling all the time. Okay, they're very resilient. They learn really well. And if you've been homeschooling for a while, they might even just be ahead anyways. And so it's not really that big of a deal if you're taking breaks, if you're trying to just give yourself a little bit of grace. If you have, babies or other life issues, maybe illnesses or family deaths or friend things going on, whatever it is, just give yourself a little bit of grace there, and plan where you can. Plan it into your home schedule where you can, and let yourself have a break. Something else that I have learned and love to do is to use Christmas to give homeschool gifts. So stuff that's art related or STEM related. And now that we're part of a charter, it's Open Ed now. It used to be My Tech High, but they will pay for a lot of those things, a lot of STEM projects or art projects. And so several of our Christmas presents get paid for by our charter school because of that. And so I have used Christmas more, because I don't like to just get pointless gifts that make lots of noise. I don't want to get a gift just to get a gift and to say I did it. I want to make sure it's meaningful, that my kids are learning something, that it's challenging for them. And so we try to focus on more STEM type stuff or more art type things, and steer away from just, here's a toy, it makes noise, it costs money, here you go. And so pretty soon, probably in about a month, my Christmas video will be coming out for what I got my kids for Christmas. And so you can look forward to that and see, but I have past ones if you want to go look at some of the past things that I have gotten. But I really like to focus Christmas around, or games too. What could we use for homeschool? Whether it's stuff for engineering or games, you know, for game schooling, maybe a new geography game, a new math game, things like that, because I feel like it just makes it more meaningful. It also helps build our homeschool, and it just keeps my kids focused on like learning and things like that, instead of let me just have all the toys in the world, because I don't like that at all. All right, something else that I have learned sometimes the hard way is that it is nice to have all the extra things. So like all the manipulatives, that's a really weird word, the art supplies, all of that kind of stuff is great to have, all the extra books, but it's not necessary to have a good homeschool experience. And sometimes I have gotten stuck in the materialism of homeschool and bought all these things, and some of them we use and some of them we hardly use. Mostly that's what happens. 9 times out of 10, it's usually we don't use it very much to justify buying it and to store it. You know, we do still have a lot of stuff. I have a lot of kids with a lot of ages, and we still like to have a variety of things to do. And I have younger kids that will eventually use the other curriculum as well, and all the other manipulatives and type of things. But I think it's important that we don't have to like dress homeschool up in all these pretty things for it to be meaningful. Okay, we can just keep it very simple, very basic, and find so many good things around our house and outside that we probably just already have and not thinking about, and can make a really great homeschool experience without spending tons of money on all those extra things. Another thing is that it's gonna be hard, okay? Homeschool is gonna be hard. You're gonna have ups and downs. You're gonna have days, months, weeks, hours of the day that it's just hard, okay? And you don't wanna do it. It's hard to have your kids with you all the time. It really is super difficult. And I'm not saying this to like be depressing, but I feel like there's times, so when we first started homeschooling, it was hard just because it was new, and it was still like, do I really wanna do this and stuff? And so just trying to get past those mental barriers was hard, but then you get into a groove and you're like, oh, this is better, this is easier, but then you hit another roadblock and it's hard again. And it's one of those things where I'm like, it should just get easier, right? It should, we've been doing this for so long, it should just be easier, but it's just not. Okay, there's just always gonna be something that comes up that changes the dynamic and that makes something hard again. And I feel like that's kind of how it is right now too, with 2 little kids that are mobile and they need stuff to do, but they're also really loud. And then the other 4 kids will get loud because their little kids are being loud and stuff. So it's just, the dynamics are just difficult right now. And it was almost easier when those 2 little kids were a little bit littler. Like the baby was a baby still and not making much noise, and she would just sleep. And now that she's also participating, just adding another kid to make noise and make everybody else feel like they can make noise. It's like they're making noise, so now I can make noise. It just makes it difficult. So I feel like it's always gonna be hard. Like it's just always gonna be hard. There's gonna be something that's difficult. Sometimes it will last a really long time. Sometimes it might just be a difficult day, you know, or a difficult hour or whatever it is. But it's just gonna be hard. So I think accepting that and knowing that you can move through that, but enjoying what you have too, you know, not rushing everything because you just wanna get past the hard is also important. I've also come to realize that sometimes curriculum needs to be changed and sometimes curriculum just needs to be stuck with. Okay, so it's hard to know and really nobody can know but you and your kids and your spouse or whatever, as you're all working together and figuring it out. But some curriculum, it's just not gonna work for you. Maybe it doesn't work for anybody very well, and you just might need to change it, which is hard because that kind of stuff can be expensive and it could set you back a few weeks or whatever if you have to wait for something new to come once you've already started school. You thought you were all prepared, but you're not really. And so sometimes you just need to let it go. Other times you just need to stick with it. And again, this is really hard to discern when to do which. And I think it has to do a lot with like how you feel about it, how your kids are responding to it. It's a lot more of like a feeling and a frustration level than anything, I feel like, for me at least, if I feel like they're actually getting something out of it. If it's day after day and they're just not understanding and it's continually frustrating, then maybe something needs to be done. Maybe it's the curriculum, maybe it's something else, but we might need to look into it. But I think sometimes we also are too quick. Sorry, my throat has been driving me crazy. Maybe sometimes we're too quick to just throw curriculum out as well. And if we just stick with it a little bit longer, you know, we think if they don't get it really quickly, then maybe that means we need to change. But that also could mean they just need a little bit longer to figure it out. And we might need to go through it slower or explain things a little bit better. You know, we might need to just change it a little bit, but then it will work for them. So it's kind of hard, again, to discern what will be best, but sometimes you just need to get rid of it, and sometimes you just need to stick with it. Something else that I have learned is that keeping it simple really does work best for homeschool. It works best, especially for our family. And I think you can expand on keeping it simple, you know, start simple and then let it grow. But especially when you first start homeschooling, I feel like keeping it simple is the best way to go. And you can kind of evaluate where you're at and then grow things from there. I feel like when we first started homeschooling, I was excited to prepare all the things and I wanted to be prepared. You know, I wasn't necessarily excited to homeschool, but once we decided to do it, I was like, okay, this is gonna be great. I'll prepare all these things. I'll have all these activities, and I over-prepared. I thought we needed so many things and I wanted to do all the things that we had, all these activities, all these crafts, all these projects, all these things I saw like on Teachers Pay Teachers that I bought that we just ended up not using because I didn't keep it simple. I made it really complicated and we just didn't get to it. We just didn't have time to do all those things. So I think keeping it simple is really important. And then maybe if you get in a really good groove, you can start adding other things. This goes with curriculum too, like maybe just keeping it to your core subjects, math and language arts. And then as you see the groove working for that and everything's going all right, then maybe start adding some other things, more science, more history, more read alouds, more, you know, what else is there? Geography, I don't know, just any sort of other activities. But don't overwhelm yourself right from the beginning. Just try to keep it as simple as possible. Something that my husband said that has been really good is scripted lessons. If you're not familiar with what that is, The Good and the Beautiful is a really good example of that, where you go in and it basically outlines what you're supposed to say and tells you like, here, ask your child this question or have them do this here. And I know some people might be like, well, I don't like having it all outlined or people telling me what to do. But it's been really good for us and it makes it so easy because I don't have to prepare anything extra or make sure I understand. I can just pull the book out and just read what we're supposed to do, okay? And with a lot of kids, that's very important. Something else though that my husband told me, which I didn't know, so he studies economics, specifically economic history and development economics, so like in other countries and stuff. And so in a lot of other countries, they have done scripted lessons and they've given them to just normal people because it's hard for them to find teachers for students and stuff. And so in order to teach more students, they do a scripted lesson and they just give it to someone that's not, their job isn't a teacher. I don't want to say they're not qualified as a teacher, but that's not their job. They're not trained to be a teacher, but they can give them this scripted lesson, this outline of what they're supposed to do. And kids in those classes do just as well, if not better, than kids that have a normal teacher that's not using a scripted lesson. And so they have studies that have shown that. And I think that's really cool. And so just being able to have scripted lessons to be able to go through, know exactly what I'm supposed to say, what my kids are supposed to be doing, and they can, as they get older, they can read them themselves as well. They still have kind of that scripted lesson that gives them an idea. And I feel like The Good and the Beautiful does a really good job at that. And so that's something else that we've just gained over 7 years of homeschooling is understanding kind of what curriculums work best for our family, but also just what curriculums work best in general. Another thing is to set up systems. I just recently made a whole video about, it might have been 7 homeschool systems that will make everything more simple. So if I remember, I'll link it below, but if not, it shouldn't have come out that much further than this, like before this. if that makes sense. But have your kids work for you, basically, you know, like have them help around the house, have them do things. It shouldn't just be all you doing it, because if that's the case, then you're gonna be so overwhelmed. It's already overwhelming being a homeschool mom and having your kids with you all the time and being in charge of everything, you know, keeping track of the house, the food, and now your kids' education all the time. Like, it's a lot. Okay, so make sure that your kids are involved somehow. These systems are important. They help provide that structure, that routine, that flow to your day that makes things just go so much better. And it gives me a break as a mom, because they're doing things and I have time to do this, you know, or to edit, or to just sit down and read a book. Like, I have time to breathe, even though most of the day I am not breathing because it's just crazy over here sometimes, guys. And so it's so important to have systems. All right, so the next one is another thing that my husband kind of brainstormed with me, and I don't necessarily have an exact like name for it. But basically, figure out what works best for your child. And it's gonna look different probably for each child, and which is hard and overwhelming to say. But once you figure out something that works well for them, that's really important, because they learn in different ways. So let me give you a couple of examples. One of these examples is kind of another point in and of itself, but my 11-year-old daughter sometimes struggles with staying focused when she's doing her schoolwork. So my husband suggested having a timer like set, and she does, I think, 10 minutes of work and then takes a 5-minute break. And so some days she can do her work just fine without a timer, and it's not that big of a deal. But other days she will just sit in on the couch like in a complete daze and not get anything done for a really long time. And so as soon as you set the timer, she is extremely productive. It goes off. She can take a break. Sometimes she just goes and talks to my husband. Sometimes she'll just wander around. She'll play with the baby for a second, whatever it is. And then after those 5 minutes, she goes back to work. And it works amazing for her to stay focused. And again, she doesn't need it all the time. And she'd probably be more productive consistently if she used it all the time. But there's specific days where it is like the key to her getting things done. Another thing, this kind of applied for all my kids, but pinpointed an issue with one in particular. So my oldest is high functioning autistic, and sorry, I did not think of any like knowledge for teaching a child with a neurological disorder. So I'm like, oh yeah, I should have maybe thought of something for that. Maybe I'll do something separate, I don't know. But he was really struggling with doing all of his schoolwork. If he didn't understand it, he would just skip it and basically pretend that he was done with his schoolwork. So I go check it later in the day, because I don't always have time to check it right when they're doing it. And he hadn't done so much of it because he just didn't know how to do it. And I tell him repeatedly, come ask us, and he wouldn't. And so this summer I was like, we have to figure out something, because he's in 7th grade now, and in 9th grade, like, we're gonna have to keep track of grades and everything. And I cannot like grade his stuff. Like, I just didn't know how to do it because he's not doing it, you know, and all that kind of stuff. So I'm like, okay, I don't want to be like super strict and like, you have to get an A or something, you know, and have this crazy grade thing in their head. But I also wanted him and the other kids to understand that they need to value their work and put in a good amount of effort. And so my husband and I came up with a plan to have them, like, they would get points basically. So I go through and grade their work. And at first it was more difficult because I was trying to figure out how I wanted to grade everything. And language arts is different than math because it's not always as clear cut with answers and stuff. So I figured out finally after the first like month how to grade stuff in a quicker way and everything. And so I go through and grade everything, and they have to have above 90% basically. And they can go back and fix things. So if they get some mistakes, they can go back and fix them for half points. And so over the course of what, like 14 to 16 lessons, their average has to be above like a 90% or above to be able to participate in some sort of activity, which my husband decided was Super Smash Brothers. My kids haven't played video games. My husband's had a Switch for several years. My husband doesn't play it too much, but we just never had video games, especially because my oldest becomes easily addicted to those types of things. And so we're like, okay, this is going to be a reward, and maybe it will change as we continue to do this. We've only done it for 2 months, but this is a reward for you guys putting in good effort for your schoolwork. It doesn't have to be perfect, but also going back and fixing things, recognizing where you made mistakes is also important, and that's also helpful, which is why you can get half points back. But it has made a big difference for all of my kids, but especially my oldest, like a huge difference for him. He is suddenly like really focused on doing well on his schoolwork. He's trying out his language arts, where before he just he still doesn't love language arts, but he would not put in the effort. He'd just get frustrated, he'd get mad and stuff. And now with this system in place, another like homeschool system, it is working for us. It is helping us as parents to make sure our kids are understanding their schoolwork, making sure they're valuing their schoolwork, understand that we should want to do good work, okay? That we don't just leave a job half done, okay? We finish the work, we do a good job. And so it has been so good. And so overall, like, it's hard to figure out sometimes exactly what will work best for each child, and it will change, you know, depending on their stage of life and stuff. But as a parent, that's something important for us to notice, to figure out, to talk to with our significant other or with someone else, maybe if we're not sure, maybe some other homeschool parents, and try to figure out maybe something that would work best for a child that might be struggling or that we're struggling with so we can help them in the best way possible. The last thing I wanted to mention is over the course of the 7 going on 8 years, I have thought about what is important for us to do every day, because some days get really busy, some days it's hard to do everything. And so every single day, since we are Christians, I want to focus on Christ in some way. And that is important for us, and we're not always perfect about it. But if we can't get to everything, that's one of the things that I try to make sure that we do every day, is have some time in the scriptures, some time talking about Christ. And sometimes it just happens around the dinner table and we review a little bit of our scriptures for that week. But having that discussion about Christ is important for me and my family. Just it helps build us, it helps strengthen us as a family, it helps us grow closer to our Savior. And so that is something, if you are homeschooling, like, what is the most important things for you, okay, on day-to-day basis? What are the things you really want to focus on the most, that you want your kids to have, that you, like, as a big takeaway from their homeschool experience? And for me, it is Christ. It is always Christ. And I think that's important for our family. And I try to focus on that. All right, so that is 7 years of homeschool knowledge, at least that I could think of. Obviously, I was thinking of other things as I was talking to you about it that I've forgotten, left out, but there's been so many things that I have learned, and I could probably make another list and do a whole nother video at some point in the future if you'd be interested in that. But let me know down in the comments, what are some things that you've learned? Maybe how long you've been homeschooling and how much you've learned, or things you want to share with other people that might be helpful for them as well. And remember to give this video a thumbs up, and I will see you next time.